Like, he was doing things that were just badass.
That was one of the coolest moments of my life.
I was really scared, but knowing that Dan had the gun, I did have the rifle, like, we would be okay.
All right, guys, welcome to today's show. And on the show with me today, I've got Zach Hoheisel, and Zach is out of Wisconsin, and he likes to hunt all sorts of different things, which I'm realizing everybody I talk to, I'm like, the reason I get along with these guys so well is because they just like being in the outdoors. And just from our brief conversation before the podcast started, I got that feel from you right away. I think we're cut from the same cloth, and I want to give you an opportunity quick to share, a little bit about who you are for those who don't follow you already, and maybe a brief history about your hunting.
Yeah, so my name's Zach Hoheisel. You did get the pronunciation right, so
Yes.
Congrats on that. I'm a father of two, and I'm a huge outdoorsman. I was just blessed to have a dad that growing up now and having kids of my own, I can't believe how willing my dad was to take me on all of his hunting and fishing. Like, I have, somewhat limited time, and I try to drag my kids along as much as I can, but sometimes it's nice to just go up by myself. And I was the type of kid that always wanted to go along no matter what it was. And my dad always said yes. I mean, thankfully for me, I probably blew a lot of hunts for him, ruined a lot of fishing trips, but he really put that fire inside of me at a young age by allowing me to come along. And I just grew up in it. We have a family cabin about an hour away from where, my whole family lives that has a trout stream on it and 60 acres. And I grew up hunting and fishing out there. And I grew up doing a little mix of everything, but I really have always been a whitetail hunter. That's been kind of just my biggest passion, what I do the most of. But as I grew up and I went off to college, I know you're familiar with the Eau Claire area. I went to UW Stout.
Nice.
And over there's a lot of public land and a lot of kids from Minnesota, and Minnesota kids duck hunt. So I got super into duck hunting in college, bought a dog, got into dog training. So duck hunting became another big thing I do. And my biggest issue is I do a little bit of everything. So there's, there's only so much time to go around during hunting season, but I'm just obsessed with it. And that's why I started growing wild. I'm a photographer and a videographer by trade. So I share my passion for the outdoors through photos and videos and do my best to just show this whole lifestyle, everything from getting ready for a hunting or fishing trip to actually going hunting and fishing to coming back and cooking, the wild game, spending time with family outside. I'm just really proud of everything I do. And I feel like guys like you and me, I get encouraged listening to these podcasts because I realize there's so many more of us than sometimes we know. But I also feel like there's so many people that don't even know you can like harvest your own food and get out there and do stuff. I'm just really proud of the lifestyle I live, and I like sharing it with others and try to promote it in the best way possible in this day and age, because it can become divisive, and it can be a polarizing subject, hunting and fishing, but I try to share all of the good parts of it with others, and that's kind of my passion.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think I started the podcast for the same reasons that you do videography and photography. It's just a different form of sharing people's stories, sharing the experience. And I've come to love it. At first, I was kind of nervous because I went from talking with friends and family, people that I knew really well. And then I just threw something out there on TikTok like a couple months ago. Hey, if you're interested, hit me up. And all of a sudden I had like a dozen podcasts scheduled. I'm like, man, these are total strangers. I'm just supposed to figure out an hour of talking with them. And now that's like one of my favorite things to do, is just having people on that I don't know. I don't know the stories. I'm hearing all about their adventures for the first time. And I just think it's really cool when some of us little guys in the hunting community can just share our passion and how we go about it, and maybe be a little bit more relatable than, the untouchables in the hunting world.
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot of fun just getting to meet new people, and whether it's podcasts or Instagram or now TikTok is blowing up. I have so many people that I call like friends in the outdoor industry, and I've
Yep.
really never met them. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, same here. I'm like, man, all of these people, like I know them, I know about them, you know, we follow each other or whatever and follow the journeys. There's one guy on or on TikTok, and it's funny because he'll like take jabs at me as if we're like best friends, you know, like you know how you just mess with your buddies. And
Yeah.
he does that, and people are like, man, are you like, did you guys grow up together? I'm like, no, we just have this weird TikTok bromance going on just because we've been looking at each other's trail camera pictures.
That's pretty cool.
So I mean, you touched on a couple of the things that you do, and you said your passion right now is whitetail hunting. Has that always been your passion, or like when duck hunting came into your life, did that take over for a bit?
It's funny because nothing ever, I don't want to say anything ever takes over, but I definitely do have moving interests where like it might be the focus. So, like right now, fly fishing is what I'm kind of ate up with because it's newer. I just started this year, and I could go on and on about fly fishing because I'm just learning all of the things. I'm getting into it. But whitetail hunting is always like no matter what's going on in my life, whitetail hunting will always be there because it's, well, first of all, we have this cabin we can go to, and I'm really lucky. I don't know if you like, you're somewhat familiar with Wisconsin. We're in an area near Tigerton, so we have some, that area is kind of known for bigger whitetails. So, and the other thing is we only have 60 acres, which I think is kind of important because comparatively in that area, that's a really small piece of land, but it's this perfect chunk where if you look on an aerial map, there's like 1,000-acre block of timber above us and 1,000-acre block below us. And there is one little stretch of, it's actually a trout stream. So that's cool for fishing, but it's a trout stream with swamp. And then there's hardwoods on either side that connects these two things. And, so we get lots of traffic in October and November. So it's really good hunting. So I know that that's always there for me to kind of take advantage of. It's just an hour away. We have even if for some crazy reason I don't plant food plots, run trail cameras, or hang newsstands, which has never happened because I love it so much. I do the prep every year. But even if I didn't, that's always there for me. And that's always like my number one. September, October, November, I'm making time for deer hunting. But like when duck hunting was introduced, I bought a dog and I make more time for duck hunting. And when trout fishing kind of became more, I just make more time for it. And that's kind of a different season. That's more of a spring, summer thing. But bow hunting is the biggest and most consistent. All these other things, they don't necessarily come and go. I just try to make time for them. But bow hunting is like without a doubt the biggest one.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would agree. Bow hunting, I think for a short period of time, duck hunting kind of took over for me. And it was when I moved to college and didn't have a spot to call my own to archery hunt. And I was like, man, growing up in Wisconsin, I was like, man, I'm not going to go and hop on public land. Like the Orange Army, you have no idea what guys out there with a Miller in both pockets and, rifle in hand shooting at anything that moves. And so I was kind of scared off of public land for a while and came down to Missouri. And the only thing I hunted for probably the 2 or 3 years was waterfowl, aside from my yearly trips back to Wisconsin. But now archery like consumes everything. I love it. I still go out like Wednesday. I'll head out dove hunting. We've got early teal coming up, but the thing I look forward to every year is whitetail. And that's even above and beyond any of the Western trips.
Yeah. The other thing I like to say about it is they all offer different experiences. Like bow hunting to me is a time of solitude, being in the tree by myself, just decompress. But duck hunting is fun. I mean, you're making bacon and eggs in the blind. You're talking with your buddies, giving each other a hard time, and you're having fun. But like, and I don't get me wrong, I love a good duck hunt where you just smash birds, and it's a great time with your friends and family and stuff. But in my opinion, nothing beats the adrenaline rush of a cold frosty morning, hearing a twig snap, and just looking over your shoulder and there's a deer. That the payoff of a successful deer hunt is such more of an accomplishment to me and a much bigger deal. But the cool thing about duck hunting has to offer is you can be successful more times out. Like
Yep.
I don't shoot a deer every time I go out. I mean, I guess you could with doe, maybe shooting. I shoot plenty of doe. I love venison, but you know, you can go out and shoot ducks pretty consistently. Whereas like bow hunting, there's so much that happens that the kill, especially if you're just talking about like a buck kill, is like 1% of the equation, and that 1% is just so much bigger than, you know, shooting a duck or a dove or anything else.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I have birds coming in, I definitely get that like short adrenaline rush. And I'm like, man, this is really cool. I'm pumped about this. But like you said, when that twig snaps and you realize it's a deer and not the 100th squirrel of the morning, it's just like, I mean, it's like time freezes for a second. And especially if you can see him coming, you see that flash, that flicker of a tail or the ear just moving a hair through the woods. I know where I hunt in Wisconsin, it's thick woods. I mean, it's just like rolling hills covered in trees. And so I'm not seeing deer at 500 yards, you know, coming through a field. And I know some people, that's how it is, but I don't even have any edge to hunt at all on the property that I hunt. And so when you see something, it's pretty close. I mean, if you see it, it's probably within 150 yards. Most of the time where I hunt, it's within 75 right out of the gate. And man, I say I don't get buck fever until after I send a bullet or an arrow, but like that initial just, I don't know, push of adrenaline is crazy. Like for 3 seconds, it's like, oh, there's one. And then it's like, all right, chill out. Just wait a second, see what it is.
Yeah, I apologize if you can hear that noise in the background. There's a train not too far from my house.
Oh, that's really all right. My kids just came in a second ago, so it's not a big deal.
Oh, I am fully familiar with the dad life. So I get that. Yeah, but deer hunting, man, it's irreplaceable. Like I'll never be able to find the same experience I get out of deer hunting in trout fishing or duck hunting or anything else that I do. Just like, you know, I go duck hunting for different reasons. A lot of time duck hunting or pheasant hunting for me is, you know, in October when I'm kind of letting things, you know, when the weather might not be that great, or when I'm kind of letting things calm down at the cabin for deer hunting, or if it's just like a quicker thing, you know, if I can fly out my door and go on a quick dove hunt, you know, on a weeknight after, you know, a day of work and make it home and have dinner with the kids and stuff. It's just, there's different things you can do at different times, but yeah, deer hunting is special for sure.
Yeah. You mentioned you got a dog for duck hunting. And then you got kind of excited about training. What did that look like? I mean, did you get DVDs, videos, pointers from other people? How did that work?
I went a step further and I just went ahead and took a job working for a guy named Jeremy Moore. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's from Wisconsin. He owns Dog Bone Hunter, like the shed hunting, shed dog.
Oh yeah.
All that. He's really well known in the industry. So I got the dog and I started training it, and then I was like, boy, I really like this. So I just went ahead and worked for like one of the best dog trainers I could find in Wisconsin. And my job wasn't, it's not like I was training dogs with him all day. I was a warehouse person in his, you know, I was packaging materials. I was helping him with some of his social media stuff. He also has another company that he was bringing to life as I started working there called the Hodag Licking Stick. So I helped with packaging that and marketing that and stuff. But consistently through that, you know, he had client dogs in. I got to film a lot of his like weekend seminars and stuff like that. So the whole time that I was there working, I was getting to see how a professional trainer handles his dogs, and I learned so much through that. And that's when I was kind of like, oh, I didn't know anything about, I thought I knew some stuff about dog training before that. I knew nothing. And I just dove into it head first, and Harley, I'm happy to say, it turned out to be a really good little dog. She's an excellent duck hunting dog. And then she had the really cool opportunity last year. There was some really complicated stuff going on in my personal life to where I couldn't have her the whole time because I was going through like a weird move, and living situation was weird, and I just didn't have time for Harley the way I normally would. So she went out to a local hunt club and became a guide dog at a upland hunt club. So she got to hunt like 4 to 5 days a week.
Nice.
And she just became like a monster. Like
Yeah.
it went from she's a real good hunting dog to this girl's a monster. And that's pretty cool. So she'll live with me this year, but she'll still go out to that hunt club, you know, a week at a time here or there for different hunts and stuff. So that's kind of the dog thing. It's just it's a fun relationship. Harley's a family dog first. She's full of energy. Boy, she turned 4 like 2 weeks ago, and she still acts like a puppy. I mean, she's full of energy, but when it's time to hunt, she can dial it in and use that energy for some pretty cool stuff.
Man, that's awesome. I keep telling my wife, if we ever, you know, come across like 10K, I'm just gonna dump it all into an awesome dog, get it trained. I want a dog that like you're talking about can shed hunt and duck hunt and pheasant hunt and blood track. I know there's a lot of organizations that focus on multifaceted hunting dogs now. And I'm like, that'd be the coolest thing. Before I thought I needed 4 different dogs for all 4 different things, but people are training them for everything all at once. And I had a dog. Actually, I had 2 dogs. One of them had hunted for like 7 years. I found it on Facebook or Craigslist, I think, at the time. And this guy was like, man, this dog's been hunting for 7 years. It's AKC registered. I'm just looking for a hunting home. And I went and picked it up, and I was like, this is the greatest dog on the planet. Like, it will bring back a duck. And I took it out with this guy named Phil, who does like national trials and stuff. He's a judge now, also trains. And I brought my dog out. He's like, hey man, come throw birds for me or throw bumpers. And, you know, I'll give you some free pointers and help you train your dog. And so I show up, and he's like, let's see what your dog can do. And so I like threw the bumper, and the dog ran out and brought the bumper back, and I'm all like pumped. And he's like, all right, can you make it sit and stay before it just breaks next time? And I was like, I guess. He's like, can you cast with it? I'm like, I don't even know what that means. And he's just like, let me show you something. And he brought one of his dogs out, and we put like three birds out, one at 100, one at 80, and then one at like 25 yards before we got the dog out of the crate. And then he did a live flyer, which was just, he's basically got a slingshot with a 22 blank, you know, and he sends that out. Anyways, he sends this dog out, and he whistles at it, and it turns and it's treading water, just like looking at him, waiting for a command. And he's like, back. And the dog like goes exactly to where he pointed it, ends up finding all 4, three bumpers, and then a dead duck that he freezes and just reuses.
Mm-hmm.
In the amount of time it took my dog to go out and get 1 bumper that I threw like 50 yards, you know? And I'm like, okay, my dog is not that great, but I still love it. And I never really trained it well. But that's something that's on my list of things. I just want an amazing dog at some point, one that doesn't go and pick up decoys when it's supposed to be getting a live bird, you know?
Yeah, Harley's pretty, she can stop to a whistle and do all the handling. And when it was kind of a similar story, I thought, oh, my dog can, you know, I'll throw a bumper for it and it'll bring it back. It's a hunting dog. And I was at one of these training seminars, and Jeremy did the same thing, where he hit a bunch of blinds, and with casting and stopping to a whistle, he directed the dog to these. And I was like, I didn't even know something like that was possible. And I slowly worked my way up to it. And I have a really cool local dog park that has some really nice, like, technical ponds and stuff in it. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a kind of a cool feeling when I'm out there working with Harley and people come up and they're like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
That's cool. I want to get into that. And I need help with shed hunting, because I've found 2 sheds in my life that I've actually like picked up. I've seen plenty more through binoculars and stuff out west, but I can't find sheds to save my life. I have thousands of pictures of bucks on camera here at my property, and I don't know if I'm just bad at it, if the squirrels get to them before I ever do, if someone else is shed hunting it that I don't know about, or what, but I can't shed hunt very well at all. I mean, it's terrible.
The one thing I'll say about shed hunting, so I trained, Harley's brought back a couple sheds where it's like, you know, she's off hunting, I'm doing my thing, and she just brought a shed back. Like, that certainly happens after a period of time shed hunting with your dog. Like, if you're do a good enough job training, you know, they will bring bones back that you can't find or that you didn't find. But the thing I found is I started finding more sheds when I trained Harley to shed hunt because I shed hunted more. Like now it's like I have a shed dog, so I just spent more time out there, and that naturally, you know, just led into finding more sheds. The first year, Harley didn't pick up a bone that I didn't see first. You know, so but every shed I was out there, and because I was out there so much, I just wanted to get her on antlers. You know, I think I found 12 sheds in the first, you know, 2 months that we went out, which some guys probably laugh at that, but for me, that was my best year ever. I know I have some friends that pick up hundreds of sheds a year, and I don't get how they do it, but they live in Iowa. But, you know, so you're just out there more with your dog, and it's great exercise. And yeah, that's a lot of fun. I love doing that with Harley in the springtime for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. You mentioned before we started recording that you just got back from Colorado on a trip. What were you doing out there?
Yeah, so again, I've been trout fishing my whole life, really, since I was, I don't know, 10 maybe. My dad got me into it, and I grew up just fishing with worms like most people in Wisconsin. Then I switched to spinner fishing for trout, and I got really into it like in the last 2 or 3 years, where like I just love trout fishing. And then I bought a fly rod, and I fell off the deep end. Like I'm a full out trout bum now. I go out as much as I can. And this year, getting into fly fishing, I've done some really cool things, had some incredible experiences with like going over to the driftless area, fly fishing over there in southwest Wisconsin. That was great. I fished this thing called the hex hatch. For people that don't know, like fly fishing is a lot about different bug hatches. And I had a friend tell me about what this thing was, and a hex, its real name is like a hexagenius or something like that, but it's this big, huge mayfly that hatches at night only during certain times of the year in certain places. So we go out there in the dark, and all of a sudden these bugs start hatching, and I'm not kidding you, dude. It looks like a biblical plague. Like, don't open your mouth because you'll get bugs in your mouth.
Jeez.
And all you hear is fish rising, eating these flies. And kind of the big fish come out to play because they're these big, huge flies full of protein. It's at night, and you're just sitting there. And I mean, I had fish running into my legs in the river. Like I've never had that happen, but they're splashing all around you, and you're just waiting for a fish that sounds big. You cast at them in the dark, and we caught several fish that night. I caught 3 fish over 15 inches. My biggest was an 18-inch fish, which that's a really nice brown trout in Wisconsin.
Jeez, yeah.
But he had caught like a 22-inch brown. And I was like, this is incredible. And he was just kind of telling me more about all this stuff. So when I got back from that, I was like, I need to do more of this. And I was like, I called my brother up because he was kind of getting into trout fishing at the same time. He's like, what if we just went out west this year? And I was like, I'd be down. And he's like, all right, Colorado. And we just started planning. And we went out to Colorado, kind of the Silverthorne Kremling area. We camped on the Green Mountain Reservoir, which is just beautiful. And I mean, the whole thing was an adventure. We left at 11 a.m. on Monday. So the drive, we got there at 4 a.m. the next day. So I drove through the night, and I drove like 13 hours straight. And of course it was light through like Nebraska and Iowa and all the boring stuff. And then as soon as we started getting into the mountains, it was dark. But we woke up on the Green Mountain Reservoir to just a beautiful mountain view, set up camp, and then we fished for 6 days on the Blue River, the Colorado River, and then for one day we drove down to the Eagle Vale area and fished the Eagle River, and it was just great. I mean, we caught some great fish, but I could have gone out there and just drove around, and it would have been worth a trip. It's just out there. So
yeah, Colorado is awesome. Now, you're trout fishing. You grew up fishing with worms. I'm guessing, bluegill. You're in Wisconsin, so it's like bluegill, walleye, pike, crappie, I guess. Are you trout fishing for food or for fun or for both?
So this, I'm starting to turn into a little bit of a snob, I guess. I always trout fished. Like my goal when I went trout fishing is I went out there to catch fish because I like eating trout, and I still eat trout without a doubt. That's kind of this whole thing. But because I've gotten into fly fishing and now I'm going out there 3-4 times a week, they're not like crappie and bluegill and stuff. They're a very fragile fish and very fragile resource. So because I trout fish so much, I don't believe that it would be right for me to keep limits every time I went out there, because I do think that would impact the population. So now I do much more catch and release fishing. And I don't pass any judgment on anyone that does keep trout and eat them, because I still eat trout. And like, I used to be a part of all these trout fishing groups, and I'd post, that I kept some fish to eat, and people would just like destroy me for it. And I didn't get, like, I hated the catch and release crowd because they were so mean. But like, now I'm starting to get it. It's like, okay, this is a bigger thing. I do it more. I get why people, are part of the catch and release. And I understand that these trout are a really fragile resource. So I do mostly catch and release now, but I really love eating fresh caught trout over fire. I mean, there's nothing better. So
yeah. I aside from bass fishing, I don't think I've ever gone out to catch something that I wasn't planning on keeping and eating.
Yeah.
But living out in Colorado for a couple of years, you're not joking, man. You get some like cutthroat, and I don't mean the fish, but like you get some cutthroat trout fishers, and it's like, dude, whoa, chill, man. I just do it differently. I don't do it wrong. I do it differently. Right. And I just never understood. I saw like a TikTok or a YouTube video or something, and it was this trout guide, and he's teaching these dudes from Wisconsin how to trout fish. And they're like, oh, okay, sweet. So then you like, how do you process them? And he's like, no, we don't process them. We release them. And the guy's like, yeah, into a live well. And he's like, no, back in the river. He's like, oh, okay. So you've got a stringer. And he's like, no. He's like, we let them go. He's like, I don't fully understand what you're talking about. And I thought it was just so good, because you see the difference from like anybody east of the Mississippi versus like everybody west of the Mississippi, and how they view fishing, and especially trout fishing. I get it. I get both sides of it. I think people shouldn't be quick to pass judgment on the other guys, but it makes sense. Like what you're saying, if you went out and kept a limit every time, that would have a significant impact. And if everybody did that, it would have a significant impact.
Yeah. If every dude like me that loves trout fishing as much as I did and went out 3, 4, 5 times a week did it, then it would have an impact. Back when I loved trout fishing, but I only went a handful of times a year, me keeping a limit, is just fine. But and I mean, just 6 months ago, I would have had a completely different answer. It's really since I've gotten to fly fishing, and since I've dove into, the thing about fly fishing is you have to learn so much more about the fish, like, in order to be successful at it. So I've learned so much more about the fish and how they survive, and what it is about them and stuff. And I've just learned how fragile they are. So that's where I was kind of like, okay, I need to change this a little bit. And I still, of course, pass no judgment on people that are out there to keep and eat fish. That's why this industry exists. If you couldn't do that, we wouldn't have trout fishing. So, but yeah, that's been a new change in my life, especially because I'm such a meat eater, wild game eater. Like I love venison. I eat everything from squirrels to ducks to rabbits, deer.
Yep.
I mean, so yeah.
Man, that's awesome. Are you tying your own flies, or is that the next step in the progression of trout fishing?
I know October 15th, I'm going to buy a vise and start tying flies, because that's the end of the season here in Wisconsin. And I know just the way I am, when I dive into something, I dive in head first. And I figured it'd be a good time to, while I'm up at the cabin at night or midday, I don't hunt mornings early season. I don't hunt mornings until like October 28th. So while I'm up at the cabin, for a weekend, I'll be tying flies and learning that whole thing. But I figured I better wait until I have a little bit more time for it. So I'm going to tie flies all winter and learn that side of things. I'm excited for that.
That's awesome. I was part of an organization out in Colorado that taught like a mentor and a student, basically a kid and an adult, how to spin fish and fly fish and shoot bows and guns and all this different stuff. And I thought it was comical because I had never tied a fly in my life. And then they taught me in like a really brief class, I mean, a couple hours. And then they're like, all right, you have to go teach people. And I'm like, oh man. And these kids are showing up with their, I don't even know what the proper term is, basically like a fly box or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they had all these flies. They're like, check this out. I learned how to tie flies last year, and this is what I've been working on. And I'm like, dude, that's amazing. Like, I can't help you at all. You are way past me. But people get so into it. And then I discovered why, because I went to buy flies one day and I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. I could buy like 30 top waters for the price of some of those flies. It's crazy expensive.
Yeah, streamers especially. So, and I just think there'd be a huge level of satisfaction of tying your own fly and catching a fish on it. But that's the next rabbit hole I'm going to dive down with fly fishing. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's going to be pretty cool. I honestly haven't done a ton of fly fishing. I do every time I go up to Alaska, but that's a little bit different. It's not like trout fishing, right? You're just fishing for spawning salmon, and they're not even really hungry at that point.
Yeah.
You're just trying to catch them in the lip. It's like snagging salmon in the lip. And I'm like, man, I feel like I'd get a lot more into fly fishing and probably become an addict like most guys do if I went and hit some of those Colorado, Montana, Wyoming streams in the mountains where it's beautiful, where you can just get away and not think about anything else for a while.
Yeah, for sure.
What is something that you haven't done that you're hoping to, or are you kind of like, man, I can't add any more hobbies to my outdoor lifestyle?
I've done, as far as like what there is to do in this area, I feel like I've done just about everything. I'd love to do more of everything. Like we talked a little bit about trapping. I'd like to get a little bit more into trapping. And I'd like to get more into more adventure style trips, like more backcountry Western stuff. I'd like to be able to do more of those a year. I've only done, my Western hunting experience is limited. I've done some of it, but I'd like to add more. And my dream, like, I don't know, people like ask me like what my bucket list hunt is for like obtainable stuff. I'd love to do just like a Colorado elk hunt. Like I've never done an elk hunt before. I'd love to do a mule deer hunt. That stuff is like somewhat obtainable, but like my dream pie in the sky one day, if I win the lottery, trip would be like a New Zealand, 2 weeks in New Zealand, red stag hunting and fly fishing. That would be like my big bucket list type of deal.
Oh yeah, that it's crazy down there. And I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but for a long time, New Zealand red stag was my number one on my bucket list. And then I was like, man, it's not really, because someone told me all of those big red stag are like high fence or like managed animals. And then recently I was talking about this on like TikTok live, and somebody popped on and they were like, hey, listen, I live down here and it's not that way. You can go out and just hunt them, and they're all over the place. They're invasive and they don't have seasons like Australia. No seasons. You can shoot just about anything any day of the year. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know why I don't live down there right now. That sounds amazing. But they just view everything as nuisance. I mean, sheep, goats, deer, you name it. If it's in New Zealand, it's probably not native.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's definitely, they have figured out that there's a market for dudes that want to come over and shoot giant red stags. So there are those high fence operations, but there's a lot of public land and wild hunts too that are, because I had the same thing where it was on my bucket list, and then I heard the same thing. It's like everything in New Zealand is high fence. So then I was like, oh man, I don't want to do that. And then I learned more about it, and that would be my dream, red stag, maybe some like weird animals like chamois and whatever, and then fly fishing.
Would you take a rifle, a bow, or both?
It at that point, if I'm able to do this dream trip of mine that I cannot even close to afford right now, I would imagine
when?
I'd be
not if, when.
Yeah, I'd be super rich at that time and could afford some time off. So I'd take a bow. Right now, I love bow hunting more, but I'll rifle hunt too. I definitely prefer bow hunting to rifle hunting, but it does kind of, when you've got limited time to go on like a excursion of some sort, there's definitely higher odds with a rifle. So I do take that into consideration when planning trips right now, but I surely love bow hunting more.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, if I have a higher rate of success doing one thing, I'll probably do it unless I'm confident enough to like think, all right, there's a decent chance I'll get it with a bow. But it's just tough, man. When you plan these trips and you spend a lot of money and you take a lot of time off, you want something to show for it when you get back. Obviously, you'll have the stories of adventure, but I'm also doing it for the meat. Like that's a big chunk of why I do it. And so it's like, if I'm going to spend $650 on a non-resident tag, I better have something to show for it. Otherwise, that's a really expensive, trip to McDonald's
Right.
when I get back.
Yeah. Last year I waited 12 years for a bear tag in Wisconsin, and I had my bear hunt last year, and I brought a bow and a rifle because 12 years is a long time to wait for a tag. And I really wanted to shoot one with a bow, but the opportunity I got, and I ran hounds. I went with a group of guys and we ran hounds, and it was an absolutely incredible experience. I was feeling very on the fence about just hound hunting in general. Like I didn't know what it was going to be like. I was very interested in it because I love dog work, but I didn't know as far as just ethics and whatever morals that I have personally as a hunter. But I'll definitely do it again. It was an incredible experience. But the tree that they put the bear that I ended up shooting in was a giant white pine, I think. And there was just lots of branches and it was high up there. And I really wanted to use my bow, but there was no way to do it. And I was like, I've waited 12 years for this. At this point, it doesn't matter. Like the bear doesn't care whether I use a bow or a gun. And I used my rifle, and I don't think it took away from the experience at all. I would have maybe rather done it with my bow, but it was an awesome experience. And like you said, you wait a long time, spend a lot of money, and meat is, I don't hunt. I hunt for the meat. That is a huge reason why I hunt. But like, if we're being honest, it's not the cheapest way to procure meat.
No.
But it's nice. It's a lot nicer when you spend money and you come back with, a couple 100 pounds of meat.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the problem. It's like, for a long time, I justified it. And I'm like, man, for, $17, I can get 2 deer and 2 turkeys here in Missouri or whatever the price is now. I don't remember. And I'm like, man, that's really not bad. And I've already got all the gear. But then I find myself getting a new bow and a new rifle and new binoculars or a new scope, a new sight. And I'm like, yeah, I can't use that cheap meat argument ever again. It is not the case.
Yeah. And it's all, it can be as cheap or as expensive as you want it to be. And it is, of course, one of the main reasons why I do what I do. And it's not necessarily because it's cheap meat, but it's because it's meat that I got. I didn't buy it. Someone else didn't kill it for me. I was there for the whole process. I know where it was coming from. And I'm ready for September. I'm about out of venison right now. I shot 4 deer last year, and me and my 2 kids ate it up all year. So we're about out.
Yeah, we had plenty, and then we had an issue with a deep freeze that made us lose a lot of it, and that was middle of summer, I think, and it still makes me sick to my stomach to think about. But we've been collecting meat again. We've got pigs here on the property, and so we've got that meat. Our season kicks off here in about 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks, and then going up to Alaska, we brought like 180 pounds of fish back, and so we've got loads and loads. We actually just had salmon tonight, and it was amazing. But I'm pumped. Typically what I do is I try to get a couple does in the freezer like right away, first month of season, because like the properties that I hunt, they're out all the time, especially where we live. We're on 20 acres, and I can just walk down the driveway, climb up in my stand, hear the kids outside playing, if they're up at the house, and have deer walk right underneath me. So I'm definitely excited to get some red meat back in the freezer after losing all that.
Yeah, I've had one freezer problem in the past, and it's like, I just want to puke every time I think about it.
Yep.
You know, because you work so hard for it, man. That's one thing I don't think anyone appreciates meat more than a hunter. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think I don't know. There's some I tell people all the time, I'm like, it's not just about the meat, it's not just about the adventure. And I can justify the cost because I'm like, when I go to an out of state hunt, that's a vacation for me as
Mhm.
well. So it's like I could go down to the beach and spend a couple $1,000s for a week, or I could go out west where I love the mountains way more than the beach. My wife does not agree with that, but I love the mountains way more than the beach. And so I'm like, it's a getaway, it's a vacation. On top of that, I get to hunt, which is the thing that I love most as far as recreation goes. And then I can bring meat back. And so I'm like, I get everything all in one, and it's still cheaper than if I were to go and like parasail in Florida and rent an Airbnb and all that.
For sure. That's a good point. And I will say, just from, I came across your TikTok, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and I've been watching some of your content and stuff. And I'll say, I think you got a pretty awesome wife. So I'm going to give you props for that. She seems really supportive, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, she is really awesome. She is a huge reason the podcast has taken off, that my TikTok's taken off. I'd be nowhere without her. And we make a lot of TikTok videos, and like there's some where she seems grumpy, and it's one of those things where she's in on it like most of the time. We don't do like the fake pranks where it's like, oh, I was hiding and I threw flour in your face after I hit you with a water balloon. But we try to make funny content that other hunters and their spouses can relate to. And it's been pretty good. I mean, I go back and watch some of the videos that I forgot we made, and I'm like, dang, that's actually really funny. Like that's pretty spot on. And it's funny, there's so many wives that comment on them, and they're like, we need a support group. We need like Hunters Wives Anonymous or something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's fun that you guys get to have fun together with that.
Yeah, it's awesome. And she's kind of getting into hunting. I don't think she'll ever be like die hard about it, but she got her first deer last year, and she was pretty pumped. So we got to eat that up. And actually, luckily, that's the only deer that we were able to save through the whole deep freeze issue. We had that one in a separate freezer, and so we did still have some red meat after that. But so you're in Wisconsin. You're coming up pretty quick on whitetail season, right?
Yeah, like 2 weeks. It's an early opener this year, so it's crazy. Summer flew by. I can't believe it's going to be here that soon. I need to get my act together.
Yeah, what are you doing in preparation for it?
So I got my food plots in, all my food plots and trail cameras up. I've had my trail cameras running all summer. I finished planting food plots about a week and a half ago, and thank God we finally got some rain. This last weekend we got a bunch of rain, so I'm actually going to fly up to the cabin probably tomorrow, Monday and Tuesday, just to check on things, check trail cameras, make sure everything with the food plots are going well. All of our stands are hung and ready to go. I'll probably trim some of them out every year. We do some maintenance. We normally add a couple stands every year and just check, ratchet straps and make sure everything's trimmed out with shooting lanes and stuff. So I'm probably going to do that this Monday and Tuesday. And then I've got a 3-year saga with a deer going on, and it's a little bit crazy how well I know this deer. So his name is Dagger. And I put a video out. So similar to you, I had a couple TikToks like go viral a couple years ago, and one of them was because of the story with Dagger. I found him 3 years ago. He was, at the time, he was just a beautiful like 145-inch straight 8-pointer. And on my rutcation, I took 4 days off. I shot this deer twice, had 7 encounters with him, 3 or 4 of which were inside of 20 yards, and he was still living at the end of the week. And then I saw him, and it's all on video. You can watch it on YouTube. I look like an idiot. It was so hard to put out there because, I broadside at 20 yards the first time. To this day, I don't know what happened on that first shot. I felt rock solid. I just hit him low. Like I shot under his heart. I barely broke skin. There's barely any blood. just a flesh wound. Saw him the next morning. Actually saw him that night again from the front porch of my cabin. I saw him because I was like, I don't know if I should go and hunt. We didn't find this deer. I was thinking about, I didn't know what to do. And then I saw him that night off the front porch of my cabin, saw him again from the stand the next morning, shot him again the next night. And saw him 2 more times. Then I saw him with the gun, but he was running at like 150 yards. And I was like, I'm not wounding this deer again. He came back last year, and the story with this deer is he typically shows up like right now. Is like I'll get my first. He'll either be just coming out of velvet or still have his velvet on. Like towards the very end of August, we'll get a couple pictures of him, and he'll be really spotty through September and October. I'll just see him every once in a while. He'll kind of swing through, and then he lives on my farm during November. He lives on our land during the rut. And last year he was like 165 inch again, straight 8-pointer, but he had 12 points because of different kickers and whatnot. So he's like probably 160, 165 last year. So if history repeats itself, I'm hoping to have a picture of him on this next trail camera pull, and I'm hoping to be after him again this season. Because as far as I know, no one's killed him. I haven't heard of anyone finding his sheds or shooting him. So he should still be there, and that will be. If I could close the deal on that deer, that would be one heck of a story.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I hear stories like this and I'm like, that would haunt me forever. I mean,
truthfully, there hasn't been a day that goes by that I haven't thought about the not only the first miss, but the second. I mean, if you watch the video, it's just like, how did this even happen?
Oh man, I'm watching the video tonight. You better believe I'm throwing it up on my TV because
I'll warn you, it's a long one. It's a longer video than I normally put out. It's like 40 minutes, but it had to be that long to explain everything that happened because it's like so crazy how it all came together. But yeah, it's pretty wild. It's the second. So when I shot this deer, I shot him the first morning. We blood trailed him. I knew it wasn't a lethal hit, or I was fairly confident it wasn't a lethal hit. I saw him off my cabin porch that night. I saw him the next morning out of the same stand that I shot him in the day prior. He just didn't come within range, and I saw where he was headed. So I climbed out of my tree stand, went to a different place for the evening hunt, and sure enough, I could have spit on him. He was at 5 yards in front of my stand, but I was moving my stupid camera, and I couldn't come to full draw. And I came to full draw when he was walking away, and he quartered, and I missed him at 20 yards. Well, I nicked him again. I drew hair. He didn't even bleed the second time. And then I saw him on the next 3 hunts in a row, and he didn't come within bow range again. And then even the way I saw him gun hunting was like, this is like a stupid horror movie where I sit all day gun hunting, and I sit in this box blind that's like, it's literally 100 yards from the front door of our cabin. And I had to use the facilities, and I wanted to grab a snack. So I left my stand like an idiot, and I went back to the cabin, sitting on the cabin, eating a sandwich, about to grab my backpack to head back to the stand. And these 3 bucks start running in between my cabin and the stand. And I can see them, but there's a bunch of pine trees and stuff in the way. So I'm like down like on the cooler with my rifle, trying to just not shoot them, but see what they are. And sure enough, I see one of them. I'm like, I think that's DAGGER. So they kind of run towards the direction of my dad's stand. I hear shooting. My dad calls me, and we have really spotty reception. And I thought I heard him say I shot DAGGER. So I was like, all right, like at this, I was DAGGER or bust. So I was like, all right, time to like start stacking some does up for meat or whatever.
Yeah.
So I shot a doe, and somehow with the miscommunication, my dad thought I said I shot DAGGER, but I was asking him, did you shoot DAGGER? So I shoot this doe, and again, I have to go to the bathroom. So I'm peeing off like the door of my box blind. I sit down in my chair, and I look to my left, and DAGGER's running across the field at 75 yards. And I'm like, what are you doing still alive? He's running. I got my scope on him, but I didn't want to shoot him. And like a minute later, my dad pops out. My dad spooked DAGGER towards me. And it was just this whole debacle where it's like, this deer is not meant to die yet. So
no.
It's all on
So
film, man.
is that it? Is that it this year? I mean, like, is that the only deer you're going after?
If he's alive, it'd be hard for me to say he's the only deer I'm after. Like if I get confirmed pictures of him and he's alive, it's probably Dagger or bust. But we got a couple other like really nice deer that if I can't find him or if he doesn't show up, I would shoot. But as soon as I get a picture of that deer, yeah, it's Dagger or bust, I think.
Man, that's so cool. I love having history with deer. I mean, that's one of my favorite things. At this point, trail cameras are like equally as fun to me as hunting.
Yeah, totally
I
agree.
just geek out if I'm out in the field, and I always bring my computer with. I'll grab the card, throw it in the computer, and like as soon as it loads the full screen of pictures, I'm just like, oh yes, they're back, they're back. And luckily this year I've got more bucks on camera this year than I ever have. And our property is the property that I hunt. I mean, it's like 230 acres, but it's not like great whitetail habitat, all of it. A good chunk of it is cattle pasture. I mean, I would say 75 to 80% of it is where cows run. I don't get big bucks on camera on any of that. If I do, it's just like a couple times a year. But the one section of it that the cows can't go on, I get these bucks like every single night. I mean, every night. And it's the same ones and they come out the same way. There's one called Valentino and he shows up before all the other ones and hangs out for 45 minutes. And then all of a sudden Snakebite shows up and then Max. And I mean, it's just like, I know these deer and I've seen them all during daylight already so far, but it's like once every other week. And so I don't know. I'm pretty hopeful this year, but there's a couple that I'm like, they're freaks. They're 50% bigger than all the other ones on camera. And so I still don't know what my game plan is this year for it. I'm just going to go sit out there and see what gets my blood pumping.
Yeah, I think there's like two forms of deer hunting that are hunting in general that are really fun to me. And one is like managing property, running trail cameras, and figuring a deer out and making like an informed decision on how to kill a deer. I think that's super fun and requires a lot of strategy, but it's also fun to like go to a place you've never been, go in blind and just try to like get in it and figure it out as you go.
Yeah.
They're both unique experiences and are totally different. And I'm just because of time, I don't do a whole lot of public land hunting anymore. I used to in college, but it's like if I've got time to go deer hunting, I'm going to do it at my cabin where I know I have a high percentage chance. But every once in a while, I'll just go out to public land, go on the ground and, see what happens. They're both really, really fun, but building a story, man, that's what I'm into right now.
Oh yeah. I totally get what you're saying. The two different types of hunting, because for me in Missouri, it's like building the story. It's tracking these deer. It's recording them year after year, going through tens of thousands of pictures on my trail camera, having in-person sightings, multiple encounters. And then when I go to Wisconsin, I have 0 cameras in Wisconsin. Although I'm in one of the best counties in the country for whitetail hunting, I don't run cameras up there. I don't do any habitat improvement because I only hunt up there during the 9-day rifle season. But there's something about it. It's just a different aspect where you're sitting there and there's no telling what's going to show up.
Yeah.
I mean, and even if I did run cameras, it would be that way because the numbers in Wisconsin, like there are so many deer there. It's crazy. And we're in farm
especially
country
over there. Yeah. Especially where you're at. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm like, man, I could sit in the stand and I could either see 0 deer, depending on the year. Like we had one year that was really bad. It was so wet, the farmers couldn't get the corn out. And I mean, it was like probably, I think 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. I don't remember. But anyways, they couldn't get the corn out and we hardly saw any deer the whole season. But if it's a normal year, when they get the crops out, the deer move to the woods. They're starting to feed on acorns. And I mean, it's not uncommon to see 40, 50 deer in one day just sitting in the woods. And it's like they funnel through. And it might be a spike, it might be a doe, it might be 12 does, or it might just be the biggest buck you've ever seen in your life. And so it's like the fact that you're always on edge. For me, bow hunting here, I sit in the stand and I'm like, okay, it's 30 minutes before the end of shooting. I should probably start paying attention.
Yeah.
In Wisconsin, you could be out there at 12 noon and you've just got to be on edge. Like at any second, my whole world could change.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what hunting's all about, man. You live for that 3 seconds of that twig snaps and all of a sudden a big buck in front of you. You know, just think of how many hours you sat there and nothing but that couple seconds makes it all worth it.
Well, and people don't get, like, I brought my wife out last year hunting with a rifle, and she's like, she looked at me after maybe an hour and a half of being out there, and she goes, "So you sit here all day long?" And I'm like, yeah, this is 100% what I do. And she's like, I just think of all of the things that I could be getting done and checking off my list during this time. And I'm like, it's not about, I mean, part of it's about the sit. Like I do enjoy just like sitting, enjoying the calm. But then there's another part of it where it's like the few seconds of excitement, or even just catching a glimpse of a deer, 400 yards across the field. It just gets your endorphins pumping or like firing. And I don't know, there's no other way to explain it if someone hasn't done it.
Those couple seconds were the animal you're after. And then how many just cool things do hunters get to see that most other people don't, unless they watch like Nat Geo or something? Like I have a stand right over the creek. I've seen a family of otters playing. Like I watched them for like 3 hours just playing and acting like kids. And then I've seen raccoons do all sorts of crazy things and just the different birds and squirrels. One time I saw this one squirrel that I swear to God, I don't know what was wrong with it, but I saw this squirrel fall off a tree like 15 times in a row. Like it just climb up and fall off. It was the most unathletic squirrel in history. But just like all the cool things we get to see because we're out there in nature, blending in. I mean, that's what it's all about for me. But yeah, why I said I love bow hunting or deer hunting the most is because the ultimate payoff of not even harvesting a deer, but having that quick adrenaline rush or something, you're sitting in your stand, nothing happens it's November, nothing's happened for 4 hours. And all of a sudden a buck comes screaming by chasing a doe. It's like that 10 seconds made the whole day worth it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think back to some of my first hunts when I hear that twig snap and I turn and I see the silhouette of a deer coming through the woods. It's early morning or late at night. And the only thing I can compare, like the rush of adrenaline and like my heart pounding so hard, was like when I first started speaking in front of a lot of people. For my job, I used to have to do it, but it was like you start thinking about what you're going to say and like, oh man, I'm about to have to go up in front of them. And it's just like, I don't know. It like, it paralyzes you. And it's that same feeling, but in a good way when a deer walks in the woods. But yeah, I totally agree with the, with like seeing random things that you'd never see otherwise. Like I've seen families of armadillos. I've never seen a baby armadillo in my life. And like walking to my stand or from the stand, I've seen them. I've seen coyotes come out and deer chase coyotes off. I've seen 3 coyotes come out and scare the biggest buck I would have ever had a shot at away. I've seen hawks come down and try to take out turkeys. And I mean, it's just like a whole different world out there when you can sit and experience and put the hours in. And even without pulling the trigger or bringing home a deer, like that's all still worth it to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, hey, we're coming up on an hour, and I want to give you a chance to share with the listeners where they can find your stuff, because I think a lot of people are going to want to see this Dagger story play out. So don't be surprised if you have a couple new views on YouTube.
I hope so, man. So everything is at Growing Wild TV. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and I do a little bit on TikTok. I used to do more, and I have a love-hate relationship with TikTok. It can be really fun, and I should do more because it's by far my biggest platform, but I just kind of neglect it for some reason. But everything's at Growing Wild TV, and I'm super excited. If there's a time to like kind of hop on the train, I would say right now, because hunting season's right around the corner, and with quitting my job and going full time on my own, I should have more time ever than this year to get out there. And I have tons of, I think I have like, I'm coming up to 100 videos on YouTube.
Dang.
So there's plenty of past content to watch if you want to watch hunting, fishing, family weekends at the cabin. I mean, I put my whole life on there. So I think it's a lot of fun to, I have the YouTube accounts that I follow, and you feel like you get to know someone. I try to make it like that on YouTube. But the DAGGER hunt, if that's the one you want to watch, I named it something super clickbaity. It's from 2018, and it's called like November rut hunting, bucks everywhere, or something to that effect. Yeah. That's a real fun video if you want to watch me look like a serious idiot. I make a fool out of myself in that video, and you get to see me like crying and screaming and all sorts of stuff. An emotional roller coaster. But and then Facebook and Instagram, I post pictures just about every day, whether it be the bucks that I'm after, trail camera photos, or just photos from my experiences, what I'm up to. I try to be as active as I can. I try to reply to every message. So follow along. I love sharing my stories, and I think I got some pretty cool stuff coming this year that'll be worth watching.
Man, that's awesome. I think all the content that you've put out that I've seen has been great. That DAGGER one, though, I'm pretty pumped about. And I think it's cool when people can relate and they don't only see the success, they see the struggle. I mean, when you can follow the progression of a story, you probably have more people like rooting for you right now to finally catch up and close that chapter with that deer. Whereas if it's like a deer that you just randomly run into and it's like, hey, look, I got it, and now it's on my wall and in my freezer.
Mm-hmm.
It's way better to build that that story with something year after year. But I want to give you one more chance. This segment I always call emptying the chamber. It's your opportunity to just share one final thing with the listeners.
My final thing would be like, just do it. This year for me, I've had a lot change in my personal life in the last year and a half or so. Like this last year, I think has been one of the craziest years with COVID. And I think just overall, like national depression, anxiety, people just being cooped up and wore out and tired and frustrated is at an all-time high. And I've talked about heading out west for forever. I've talked about getting into fly fishing forever. I've talked about all these things. And this year is the year that I'm just doing it. No matter what it is in the outdoors, just take those opportunities. Obviously be smart, make sure it's okay with your family. Don't go into debt or, max out a credit card or something to go on a trip you can't afford. But prioritize the things that matter. It's amazing to me if you didn't go out to the bar for a couple weekends a year, or if you didn't go to that movie, what could that get you as far as like a hunting trip or something? And just prioritize the things that matter and are meaningful. And I really think outdoor experiences are a huge part of that. So maybe take a trip this year, maybe start a new outdoor hobby, and just get into it and enjoy it. I've really been this year trying to find more time to get outside, do the things I love, and prioritize the things that matter. And it's made a big difference in my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think my little bit here at the end would be along those lines. Just try something new. You never know what you're going to get into. You never know what you're going to like. Just expand your hobbies or passions. And like with you, fly fishing took off and it's something you love to do. Now you're going to be getting a fly tying kit. And I just think it's cool when you can find something else, especially like deer hunting doesn't last all year. Mm-hmm. If you can get into things that kind of like turkey hunting for me is like helps bridge the gap between deer hunting and deer hunting, or like deer hunting mm-hmm. and deer prep. So get out and try something like that. But yeah. I appreciate you being on, man. It's been a good time, and we'll definitely have to do this again, hear how this story ends up on the farm this year. I'm hoping, man, text me, shoot me a message on Instagram. I want to see a trail camera picture if that thing's alive, and I will be following along.
If he's alive, I will for surely do that. I should be up there this Monday and Tuesday. And I got trail cameras out for them. And thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I got another train coming by right
Yeah, I was like, dang, man, that got loud.
Yeah, but I really appreciate you having me on there. And if I could give one more thing, I don't know when this podcast is going to come out, but right now it's the 29th. On Monday, tomorrow night, my Colorado video is coming out, and I'm super excited for that. So I'm sure that'll be out whenever this podcast is released. But I'm really excited about that. That's one of my favorite videos I've put together because it was quite an experience. So make sure you check that out too.
Yeah, that's awesome. I will this will either go out tomorrow morning right away or it'll go out Wednesday morning. But because you've got that video out, I might just bump this up on the list and I'll try to get it out 5 a.m. tomorrow morning Central Time.
Perfect. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks again.
Thank you.